Welcome to Chris Evans Radio. We are back with little Dave with another glorious Monday podcast as we get closer to Christmas. So I've still done zero Christmas shopping.
Oh,
Um,
dude, I'm right there with you.
I don't know
Thank
if you
God
said,
for Amazon.
yeah, no shit. Yeah. And just like, you need to start going Christmas shopping, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna next off day, I'm just gonna allot like 2 hours for that shit and knock it all out.
Mhm.
So I'm glad you and I are on the same page with that. Like I think that's really hard when you live a relatively regimented life to add something new in. And I know that sounds funny, right? But it's like when you and I wake up, it's like cardio, eating, training, eating, and then you throw client work in all of that. And then it's like, okay, cool, there's another Monday down.
Yep.
Yeah, and as I was telling you before we get started, like usually this is my slower season of the year, and then everybody tends to want to get rolling after January. But I've been so fortunate to take a lot of new clients or have clients that have been with me for a long time that want to do early spring shows,
Mhm.
and they're already in prep. And then people who are just tired of being fat and don't want to be fat through Christmas, like general population people who are like, we got to get rolling, like let's do this shit. So I think I onboarded like six new people last week, so
Yeah.
it's a good thing. And then rolled people into prep last week. So I think that's really tough for some, and that's why I shared that to my story when I told Keena, I was like, let's go ahead and start prep now, as opposed to waiting until after Christmas. She's like, oh, thank God. Where I'm sure you've had clients too, where if you would have pitched that to them, they'd be like, can we just wait till after Christmas?
Mhm.
So
Yeah. Well, I always know like right off the bat, sometimes if things are going to work or how well they're going to work.
yes.
I've had people reach out and they're like, hey, I want to start coaching, getting coached, but I've got a vacation in 2 weeks.
Yep.
Um, can we, I've even had one dude who's like, I've got a vacation 3 months from now. Can we put it off? And it was like, Jesus fuck, dude. Like, why don't we just get on track and like you go take it? Even if you took everything fucking off for the vacation, like you'd be better off. That's 3 months from now.
Great. I have never once answered that with waiting. And again, I've had that countless times. Well, I have a vacation in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. What should I do? And I'm like, we should start now.
Yeah,
A lot of times they're shocked because in my mind, like what I want to do during that, what I would consider like a pre-vacation phase is get you used to my coaching style, having a regimen, getting you used to sending your check-ins on, let's say Tuesday at 7 a.m. Like I want to get all that like food prep, grocery shopping, training questions. I want to get all that shit knocked out and get you in a good rhythm. Then if you take a week off of vacation, like you said, or we do it intelligently, and then you come back and you're just ready to roll, as opposed to waiting 4 weeks, doing your vacation, then that's 5 weeks before we actually get started. Then you get started and we have to go through all that like learning each other. And it's like we may have wasted 8 to 9 weeks
yeah,
when all that could have been prevented really easily.
yeah. And I mean, like, there's very few people who are going to come on and have zero questions from the get go.
Yes.
You're not. This is not just an IKEA bookshelf.
Yeah.
And how many people fuck those up for one, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
You
Including my.
know, Yeah, including myself. I have a fucking bed frame in there I just put together, and I have like 10 missing parts. That it was like it still fucking fits a bed. I gave up on that shit. But
Yeah.
um, however many things are, the little aspects of coaching, right?
Yep.
Being able to ask questions and answer things, honestly,
Mhm.
that is a learned skill. And like that is if you can't answer things honestly, you can't be coached.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. It's one of the guys I on board last week. Like we discovered really quick that cream of rice for him sits really heavy as opposed to regular rice, regular potatoes, or even oats. And like that's something that easily we could have just plowed through, but instead we fixed that. And immediately 2 days later, he's like, man, this is so much better. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, cool. Like, we'll save the cream of rice for your final meal of the night, if at all, and let's move the fuck on. Like, be done with it. Again, those are little things where, I've had guys that were telling me cream of rice is terrible for them, and you find out they're using the orange box, and like, yeah, no shit.
Oh, I legit actually fun story. I had a
Okay, yeah,
client, he's like cream of rice, I cannot digest this at all. And I was like, can you send me a picture of like how you're making it?
right, yeah.
Dude legitimately was pouring it into his protein shake and not cooking it.
Oh,
So
good
like his
God.
his post workout meal was whey, cream of rice, right?
Yep.
and some fruit. But like he was just pouring the cream of rice into his shaker cup and then adding his protein and drinking it.
Yep.
And I was like, you just drank 70 grams of uncooked cream of rice? Like, fuck, man, I feel bad for your digestion. Like, and it's just like, I guess, I mean, honestly, I didn't say fucking cook it, but like, I thought that was kind of given when it says dry measure, you know?
I really wish that that hadn't happened to me before.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, I know you probably experienced this before.
Yeah, and what's bad is I think, with the new flavored cream of rice, I think people think that you just mix it like it's mixing intra-workout essentials and carbohydrate powder. I really
Oh,
believe
yeah.
they think. So they're like, oh, okay, cool. Like this guy in specific that I'm thinking about, he's like, I got vanilla protein and I'm mixing it with the blueberry muffin, rice and grinds because I thought that would be a good combo. And I'm like, yeah, it definitely would, but you got to cook the cream of rice first. And he's like, no, I thought you just mixed it all in water and shook it and drank it. He said, I kept wondering how yours didn't, because he would say, is yours clumpy? And I'm like, no, because I stir it. And I didn't assume that he meant it's clumpy in the shaker cup.
Exactly. Pretty much the same fucking question. I was like, no, it's never clumpy. I mean, you just got to use a whisk, man.
Right. Yeah.
And
Right.
he's probably like, what the fuck?
Yeah, because what's really interesting is he which is why I've made three fucking YouTube videos of this, right? Like the things that I think again, it goes back to stuff that you and I may take for granted. In my mind, on the back it has the cooking instructions.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, I think maybe that some people don't have time in their life or just they don't think about it. They're like, oh, it's chocolate brownie, cream of rice, and it's chocolate protein. I'm gonna mix it, I'm gonna shake it, I'm gonna chug it, eat a banana with it. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I get it.
I get it. That would have been very nice.
Right. Yeah. Like it's not carbolin.
Yeah. Yeah. What does that have to make? Yeah, I mean, someone make this. If you can make a cooked cream of rice with dehydrated and
Right.
then put back into a shaker cup, yeah, I'd buy it right now. That'd be convenient as fuck.
Oh, yeah, that would be incredible. Agreed. Agreed. In a prep, I wouldn't want that, but off season, I'll bring that on.
Yeah. Oh, I would love it. It'd be fantastic.
Which is why I used to always do, as said many times, like I used to do that really super liquidy cream of rice, and I'd still cook it, but it was so runny because I'd put double, if not triple, the water in there, and that way I could just drink it.
Hmm.
Like, but the rice was actually still cooked and fluffy. It was
Hmm.
just like a soup.
Yeah.
So, word of the wise, if you're out there getting cream of rice, you will, if you want to drink it, you still have to cook it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So. All right, there's our beginning nutrition talk since people wanted it. Now get into training, which, I sent you these three bullet points over that I really want to get into because I feel like I've had to answer them so many times in the last 3 months, last half year. And that is how to select the weight that you're training with. And, you know, I think on paper, or if I'm training someone in person, that's way easier to get a sense of or feel. But let's say, for example, I've never trained you, you're a new client, but you have experience in the gym. If we're going to go do lat pull downs, I'll still say to you, hey, Dave, how much do you usually do for 8 to 10, 8 to 12? And you might say 160. Okay, cool. Well, I may realize that your idea of a perfect rep may be different than mine, but I at least have a bearing of where to start you for your warm-up sets. Um,
Yep.
so if you were describing to a client how to find their working weight, are there any parameters or any guidelines you typically give people to figure that out?
I mean, usually you're going to have a rep number in mind,
Correct. Yep.
right? And I would rather have someone blow past that
Yeah.
the first time
Agreed.
and then go from there. So if you're on an incline hammer press, right? You won't die in the bottom.
No.
You won't die. If you die in the mid range, nothing's gonna happen. You just drop it. You're fine,
Yep.
right? It's like, okay, cool. One plate you can do indefinitely,
Correct.
right? And if you're new, let's just jump up to two plates.
Yep.
And you don't know how many reps you're gonna get. Just take it to failure.
Right.
If
Yep.
you fail at 10 to 12, cool. That's probably where we wanted the rep range.
Yes.
If you fail at 18, fantastic. You hit failure. You're like, okay, cool. We did what we need to do. But next week, I need to go a bit heavier so my rep range is where it should be. And
Yep.
it's just a matter of, you kind of just have to fuck around and find out,
Agreed.
and I would honestly shoot a little bit on the lighter side than overreaching. Because
Yeah.
cool, let's say you throw 3 plates on there and you get 3 reps. It's like, okay, cool. We knew that was way too heavy,
No,
but you're not getting that energy back,
no, no, not a bit.
you know. And we're not powerlifters. We're not. Our goal is not just moving iron,
No.
you know. So it's a mixture of all of that.
You
And one
know,
thing that drives me up a wall with that is the indecisiveness.
yeah,
So in my story, like I said, I legitimately said we went from 1 plate to 2 plates.
yeah,
That is not a big jump
no,
on a bench press, right? I don't know why on earth there's so many people out here where you'll walk into any gym in the fucking world and you will see someone put 1 plate on and then they'll put on a 10
right.
and then they'll put on a 10 and then they'll put on a 10
Yeah,
and then they just fucking die of fatigue
yeah,
and they're like, wow, that was a great workout. It was like you just did basically fucking nothing
right,
for reps.
right. Yep,
You
yep,
you you did some endurance. Like you basically did a lap around the of running,
right. Yep,
and then you're expecting that to build muscle.
right.
Versus like instead of just going to something that is actually heavy and you go to failure with it,
Yep,
versus instead of trying just the drives me up a wall when I just see little additions of weight for continuous more reps.
great. Yeah. It those micro progressions, I think, is what people call them now.
Yeah,
I sound cool when I say that, right? I will always say it's just a big shitbag waste of time. Like,
yeah,
if I'm using your example in a on a newer client and I have no clue what their relative strength is. So let's say, we jump in there, put a plate on, they do 10 easy. I'd probably put a quarter on. And if the first three are flying out of their hands, I'm gonna tell them to stop.
yep,
But you said nope, just put it down. Then you load two plates on. And then to give you an example, and I say, okay, cool. Like, let's take this two plates and see how far you can go. And you hit 18. I think that's what you said, right?
hmm,
I'd give them a little bit of an extended rest period, maybe 2.5, 3 minutes, and put a quarter on
yep,
and see how many we can get. Let's say you're still above 12. On that day, I may even take another 2 to 3 minute break and put it three on and see, let's see what we get. And let's say you get three. Okay, cool. We now know that you're somewhere between 2.25 and three for your working weight.
hmm,
And if you want to get fancy, you could probably do two plates and a 35, which I would fucking hate, but it is what it is. I would assume that if the next week, if I give you that example, let's say you hit 275 for or two plates and a quarter for 12, I'd be one to bet you if I went one plate, two plate for a fill set, and then three plates, you'd be able to get eight. That would be my
yeah,
assumption when you're fresh. So I never mind. There are countless workouts when John wrote a program where I would actually just rest a little bit longer and do the top set again because I knew I undershot the load that I should have used. And or I mean, you could have argued to stay, and just do it next week. But for me, I'm always going to err on the side a little bit too much.
yeah,
If I think you and I are intelligent enough, and I don't think I could do this at the beginning of my workout. After 3 to 5 reps, you and I both know a rough range of where we're getting to. And if it's north of 20, we're going to rack it, take a deep breath. I'm going to go, you're going to go, and then we're going to load weight. Like, and I think that may not be as easy for others. But usually after you and I pick up, like if we're doing dumbbell press and we pick up the 130s and those things are flying out of our hands, like with explosive power, like bro, we're sitting those down. I'm not doing 10.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Just not. So I think for most, like to determine their top set weight, I've always felt like if you're on a progressive overload plan where you're going to do it again next week, I would rather week one be on the side of too much volume to kind of get me a starting point. So if we're using the example of the chest press, like you said, I would know that probably my working weight for week two would need to be three plates. So if that means my warm up, I'm running going to go warm up of 15 reps with one plate. I'm going to go 1.25 for 10. I'm going to go 2 for 6, and then I'm going to put three on and do my work. So if you look at that, That's roughly how I would structure week two, where week one would have a lot more volume in there, but that's because I'm trying to establish a starting point.
Yep.
Is there anything you want to add to that before we move to our back off?
No, that pretty much covers it for your top set.
Oh, I do know what I want to do. So let's say we're three chest exercises deep. Do you need warm-ups and feeder sets?
No,
Correct.
no. I mean, you may need like depending on how foreign the movement is. Like
Right.
if you did machine dumbbell,
Yeah.
I'm definitely not picking up the 150s.
No. Right.
Like
Agreed.
because I just haven't done a dumb like I have both have been fixed plane movements.
Agreed.
But if I went dumbbell machine fly,
Right. Yep.
that third exercise, cool. I'm just gonna slam 80s on the 80 on the pin
Yeah.
and see what happens.
Correct.
There's no
Agreed.
point in me being like, oh, I need to feel how this, how that goes
Yep.
just to, because I'm already pumped. I've already got blood flowing.
Yes. Yep.
There's the very low chance of injury from not being warmed up because
Agreed. Yep.
everything else has been warming me up. Like if I'm not warmed up by that point, then fucking go home.
Agreed. All right, so let me ask you this. This is a good question. Let's say exercise one for chest was that Nautilus press that you love.
Yeah.
Exercise two was low incline dumbbell. Exercise three was Smith machine incline. And let's say your working weight was going to be 4 plates. Would you do a feeder set with 2 plates or 3 plates?
Yes.
Agreed.
I'd put two on there for
Yep.
probably six, three on there for two, and then four to go.
Perfect. Exactly right. And those are just to get acclimated to that exercise to feel it. And I think a lot of times people struggle with that. Um, okay, let's keep going with that workout. So then let's say our last exercise for chest that day was some sort of machine fly. I probably would select a pretty hard weight for set one, knowing
Hmm.
I had 2 sets.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, like at that point, I'm just gonna if I get more reps than I think I need to. Also, if I let's say I've done that workout 100 times,
yep.
but I'm at a different gym
Yes. Yep.
and all the weights are in Russian, for
Right.
example, I'm
Yep.
just gonna pick something with fucking like it sounds terrible,
Yes. Yep.
and I know I'm gonna get north of six.
Yes. Yep. Agreed. I
And if
think
I get if I get more than what I thought, it doesn't fucking matter at that point.
right. You know, I think a good example of that was when you and I were in California, we did that chest day after your show. One of the last exercises we did for chest was that Arsenal fly. Well, I'd never used one.
Yeah.
I think we put it like 2/3 of the stack to just do a few, and then we immediately pinned the whole stack and just went at it. Um,
Hmm.
and that feel set was only to gauge what that machine was going to feel like for me. And I
Yeah.
quickly realized after about 3 or 4 reps, I'm like, oh, we could put the whole fucking bitch on here. Like,
Yeah. Like, this is light.
yeah, right. Yeah. So I think there was a lot of nuance within lifting and knowing that like what you've done previous is definitely like an accrual of warm up that you don't need to waste. Like you don't need to do that stupid ass old bodybuilding pyramid of like 15, 12, 10, 8 for every exercise. It- that is just literally pissing in the wind.
Mhm.
In my mind, in my opinion. And to me, it doesn't matter the body part. A lot of times, like for shoulders, I don't do any warm up or feeder sets because I've already trained chest beforehand. I'll go right into a working set of reverse pec deck and not even blink.
Yeah.
Don't need to. I'm doing 20 plus reps and
Yeah.
my whole upper body is warm. I'm good. Typically, I'm covered in sweat. So I think that's like a really common question that most fail to realize is remove the junk volume as step one. And then step two would be identifying your top end load, but not shortchanging yourself or overshooting and being in way too heavy a load for bodybuilding rep ranges.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I always try to tell my clients this: if you get below 6 reps, it's too heavy. So yeah, I think that's we've adequately covered top set or even like or if you don't do top set, if you're doing a volume approach, your final set should be painstakingly miserable in the 8 to 20 range.
Hmm.
And depending upon the body part, it might be 8 to 12. So, all right, cool. So that's step one. I think we answered that adequately. In terms of your back off, so let's go back to that hammer strength incline. Let's say you and I both did a top set of 5 plates aside for 9 to 12 reps. Where would you go for your back off?
3 plates.
Agreed. How did you determine that?
Because I've done 4 before and it fucked me up.
Correct. Yes, that's the answer. All right, so let me do the math. Let me do the math on that because a lot of times I'll tell people like it's roughly 30-ish% off.
Yeah.
So what 5 times 45? So that's 225 aside times zero point 0.7. So roughly I need 157 and a half pounds. So what is that in terms of plates? That's right at three.
Yeah.
So 30-ish% is about right. Uh,
Yeah. Well, if you have 5 and you go down to 4, that's only a 20% decrease.
correct. Yeah.
So, and I mean, you can try that,
Yes.
but the with how if your top set is hard, your back off set when you take off weight almost feels the same weight.
Agreed. Yes. Yep.
You know.
That is your barometer to me. You should roughly get the same amount of reps. And I know a lot of people like they struggle with that. Like, well, Chris, but it's lighter. I'm like, yes, but you should be fatigued.
Yeah.
And I realize that may go over people's head as well. Um, because if you aren't milking your top set, the back off is going to be probably need to be heavier
Yeah.
than you would anticipate it because it's not, as you and I have talked many times, if we worked up to our top end load for 8 to 12 and we got 10, if we did that again, it would probably fall way well short of 10.
Yeah. It'd
Uh,
probably be like 5 or 6.
correct. And that to me signifies why we need to back off. And as you said, how you determined three was because you've tried four, which I laugh because we've all been there.
Yep.
Like when I used to regularly incline barbell 315 for 10 reps, second or third in rotation, I knew that if I dropped down to 275, that was not enough drop. It needed to be 225 or 245 because I always want to take that back off and pause the bottom and get a good stretch. So
Mhm.
again, you have to experiment. And again, I know this next generation, they want numbers, they want precision. And yes, that's beneficial to be able to track things to the T, but it isn't always the right answer.
Yep.
You know, I know you and I bang on that drum all the time, and probably the people who are listening are like, okay, enough, we get it already. But it's just the truth. Like, there's sometimes where I'll do like a hammer strength drop set and I'll put it to where it's like 2 plates, a quarter, and then another plate. And Chaz will be like, why did you want to do it that way? So, because that first drop needs to be a full plate. And then the next drop can just be a quarter.
Hmm.
Um, Again, I don't have any scientific formula or mathematical equation that gave me that other than experience. I know that first drop, if I do 4 and a quarter on the hammer strength wide for 10 plus reps, maybe 13, that if I drop down by just pulling the quarter off, it's not enough. I'll
Yep.
miss, I'll get below 6.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for the back off, I do something else I want to talk about with the back off is I try to be even more hyper focused on come down, feel the stretch, feel it lengthen, and get it fully short at the top. That doesn't mean locking the joint out, but I really want to double down on form. And I think when people hear me say that, they think, oh, is your top set not perfect? It's just way more explosive.
I always put it this way: if you can squeeze your top set into place, you're not going heavy enough.
Agreed.
I mean, this gets overthought so much in bodybuilding, but any kind of pressing movement. I mean, arms are kind of a weird one, but at the same time, it's the same concept. You can't it. You're not squeezing something into the place. You're making your bicep do the work, right? So your muscle's job is taking the bar from here to here,
Right.
right, in a press or in a curl. Just bringing your hand up towards your shoulder is your biceps job. You don't need to overthink that process,
No.
and you're being in there and being like, oh, I have to think about squeezing the whole time. It's like if you can actively think about doing that, you're not doing it to the full extent because half of your brain is being thought squeeze versus why don't you just put your entire brain in your muscle and just work it?
Right.
You know,
Right.
I've seen that hinder so many people.
Yep.
And the people you see squeezing their muscles and growing they're growing in spite of that, not
Yes.
because of that,
Right. Yeah.
you know.
Before it became really popular to do back offsets, I always instinctually did them because it was my way of scratching both camps of
Exactly.
moving heavy load aggressively and then lowering the weight enough to where I could be precise with it. And I was like, okay, cool. Like if the top set milked the heavy and the back offset for me worked precision, then I accomplished both on the same exercise on the same day. And then it became really popular and in demand when everyone's like, oh, like a back offset. And I was like, huh, that's really funny. I've been doing that for years and just didn't know what it was called.
Yeah.
And to me, like, let's say I'm going back to that incline barbell. If three, I'm trying to control down and then ram off my chest with purpose, just being aggressive. With that 245, if I drop down, pulse on my chest, drive it up with intent, it feels so good as a secondary set to my most important one. If you ask me which one pulled the most tissue, I'd say 315 all day long. But I think that the 245 was just as important because I always thought like if I could simultaneously build up my top set and my back off strength, I'm gonna be better. Because whatever method of growth, meaning precision or explosive power, was more effective for that muscle, I was going to get both of them.
Mhm.
So for me, it was always just a way to cover both bases, as opposed to putting all my effort, thoughts, and energy and hope into one style. Let's just do both and check that bitch off. Which is why I always agreed with John's training of like activate, power movement, pump, stretch. Great. I'm going to get every facet of training that is proven to be effective into one session. I've got to grow now, right? That was my logic.
Yeah.
So,
It's very super true.
I'd love to know like what your thought process is for your back off because I know you've told me, as I know from doing them with you, the back off a lot of times is worse than the top set in terms of pain tolerance.
Mhm.
So, what do you think about when you're like selecting the weight and knowing like going into a back off? Like, what is the thought process there, or is there a thought shift from top set to back off?
Um, Honestly, it's the same amount of effort goes into it. There might be a little bit more thought on the end ranges on making sure there is no bounce or anything, kind of like, little movements, what you're allowing yourself to do to push weight.
Agreed.
But then also the pain side of thing is just letting that happen.
Yes. Yep.
And sometimes that comes from fatigue. Also, like, I mean, a lot of that comes from being fatigued for sure. But the that fatigue while also keeping that all that tension on your current muscle, you know, is that pain side of things. And seeing how far you can go into that where it's painful before you actually fail
Agreed.
I think it's just super beneficial.
And you remove a little bit of fear of that heavy load because you're
Yeah.
like, this is technically a feeder set weight for me, so I know I can own it. It where listen, anyone who's heavily inclined barbelled weight knows there's a chance like, hey, I might blow my pec off or might fuck my shoulder up. Where if I pull down to 245, like, man, I was doing that when I was fucking 19 years old. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not scared of this shit. Like, I should be able to work this and take it deep to where even if I had to do a true failure without a spot, I could put that on my lap and stand up.
Yeah.
Like I'm not petrified. Where if I had 315, 365, I don't want to have that sit down and slide down my lap.
No.
Fuck that. So yeah, I've never pressed four plates like you, but I know you wouldn't want four plates sliding down your chest onto your lap.
Nope. Yeah, I'm not picking that up unless there's someone behind me.
Correct. Yes. Agreed. Agreed. So again, guys, like the biggest thing we can say here is it just takes a little bit of experimentation. And there are some days where, for no fucking reason, weights feel lighter than others. And it can be the
Yep.
same environment, the same days, the same meals, the same stress or sleep. And there's just some days you walk in and you feel strong. And then there's other days where you walk in and it's the other side of that coin and everything feels like a ton of bricks. You just have to take it for what it is. Um, and I think you and I are intelligent enough at this point, like to know as long as we do our sets and squeeze the piss out of the muscle when it's time to do that, it was a successful day and just live to fight another day and know that next week will be better. And if it's not, we have to address something with programming or nutrition or sleep.
Yeah.
So, that kind of leads us into the next question I had jotted down here is like when you're doing a drop set, and let's do John's famous leg curl drop set. Let's say you do the whole stack. How do you know on a triple drop where to put that pin on set two and three?
It's a really good question, honestly. Um, how I've always done it, especially like hamstring curls. So if I'm doing the whole stack, as I worked up to that, I kind of keep in mind where I worked up from.
Agreed.
So let's say the stack goes to 200. We're going to do 200 for the full stack for our failure, where we're going to get 14 reps with,
Yep.
right? That's in this scenario what's happening. When I worked up that stack, I started at 8. We're doing this fresh because it's lion hamstring curls. So it's exercise 1.
Yep.
So I'm probably doing 80 for like 20, just kind of feeling the shit out of that.
Agreed.
And then I'm going to bump that up to 120 and I'm going to do 8 to 10. Just depends on how it feels for the day. And then bump it up again to like 140
Yep.
for like 5. And then depending on how I feel, I might do 140, 180, and 200, or I might go 140 to 200,
Yep.
depending on how I feel that day.
Yep.
If things are just fucking flying, it's just going to 200. If
Agreed.
it's like, all right, cool, this is a kind of like I'm gonna do another feel set, just play it safe, warm up a little bit more.
Yep.
But then I'm just gonna work that backwards,
Yes.
right? So I'm like, okay, cool. So I did 200. I got my 14, put it down 140, as many as I can get,
Yep.
and then back up to 100.
Yep. Agreed. I would do the exact same thing. And I can tell you this, like sometimes like, oh, how you know if you chose it right? To me, on a drop set, if you get 6 to 10 on set two, that's a great range. Ideally, probably more like 8 to 12. But if it falls in the 6 to 10, I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
Uh, as long as those reps look great and you aren't having to sling or cheat it at all. I think a
Yeah.
lot of times, like people, when they go to drop sets, they think it's just like, oh, I just got to get these three done. And no, the form needs to be just as good as set one or mini set one as it is mini set three.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it doesn't give you an excuse to sling it around and be sloppy and use every other fucking muscle in your hamstring. Like, I want to be able to get 6 to 10, ideally 8 to 12. So, again, that might just take some experimentation. And the better you get at your top set and how strong you are dictates that second set. Like
Mm-hmm.
if that 14 is like shaking failure, if you normally were doing 140 as your second, say a month ago, you may need to even go to 120. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
because that first set is going to take it out of you way more if you're getting better at it. Um, and you may have to go something like 200, 120, 80.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so again, that just takes some playing around. I've always felt this too, is like the second and third mini set of the drop is as much test here as it is the actual muscle.
Yeah.
So you have to fight that burn and work through it. You and I talked about that with another podcast. I can't remember which one it was, where we were talking about drop sets and the benefit of them. But I think a lot of times guys get so caught up in the pain that they forget like the reason they're there. And it's like, bro, like you signed up for this. This is what you're supposed to feel. It's supposed to be horrible. That's why it's a
Mm-hmm.
drop set. That's why people love this shit for decades.
Mm-hmm.
You get to stay in that burn zone for an extended period of time where, if you walked away from that 14 reps with the stack, the burn ends there. Oh, no, we're dropping because we want a continuation of that set. That's the intensity. So with the drop, again, like stay in the form, stay in it mentally, and just fight and work through that pain. And if you reach positive failure short of 6, you know that the weight was too heavy, meaning you need to lighten the load on the first drop significantly more.
Hmm.
And then also the final round of the drop set shouldn't be so light that it's not even working.
Yeah.
I know I've seen these videos of the guys training and they're doing like drop sets to where like they have 20 pounds on a leg extension. I'm like, that's doing fucking nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like the pad jumps off their feet and the cable like buckles a little bit. It's like,
Yeah.
it's too light. Stop it.
Yeah.
So drop sets. Yeah, the answer is that. So weight selection on that. And then I think the final thing to really cover on this all things rep to me is, do you feel like there's a right tempo for the positive and negative of a rep in terms of as a whole, not like specifically with certain exercises, but and I guess I'll tell you this. The hyper analytical training style that's going on right now with these like super slow positive and negative reps. And when I say super slow, it looks to be like at least 3 to 4 second negative, 3 to 4 second positive. Um, do you think that for you and the clients you work with, that that's more beneficial than what I think was taught to us was like a 2-1-2?
No, I don't think it's more beneficial. If anything, like the amount of times I see people, especially like back training,
Yeah.
where they're overthinking the process. Your back doesn't squeeze because you're just sitting there squeezing it. Just coming up here with a bar and just holding it here, you're just it's not the same as just going and like staying in that,
Yeah.
you know. And there's so much nuance to all of this. Whereas I don't want to say there's a right or a wrong, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen people try to uh, grow back by squeezing it
Yeah.
versus like putting a plate on a T-bar row and then just squeezing it until you're not squeezing anything anymore versus like putting 4 plates on it and moving it, in the right plane. I'm not just saying fucking slanging it around,
Right.
but
Agreed.
you know, the there's a reason why most every impressive back I've ever seen was built by fucking picking things up and putting them down.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
I think Dusty Hanshaw just posted a video on his Instagram of him back in the day, Penlay rowing 5 plates, and then you go look at his stage photos, you wonder why his erectors are 6 inches thick.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not rocket science. It's just a matter of that's what built his back.
Right.
He wasn't doing this weird. All right, I need to twist my pinky to, cancel the disproportion of my, quadriceps or whatever the fuck is happening in here. It's like his job was bringing his elbow to his side and
Yep.
repeating that. You know,
I think too, the number one thing for me to remove all the fun out of training is to make me count the positive and negatives. Like,
dude, I can't even tell you how many times I don't even fucking count reps.
right.
You
Yeah.
know, like I can either do this at a high intensity
Yeah.
or I can do it with counting because I have no idea how people are like, all right, counted, go do a set of squats and do a 2 second negative and film it,
Right. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You're either not doing 2 second negative or you're not doing the set.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. The amount of times when we're at the end filming the wrap up for my YouTube videos and I'm trying to remember how many reps I did, I have no clue. And if a lot of times, if I want to say like on a specific hack squat or leg press or a pull down, we'll go back on Chance's camera and watch the set again and count the reps. And that's how I know exactly how many I did.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of times I'm like, it had to be more than 8, but it was less than 20.
Yeah, that's usually I'm usually in a range,
Right.
and that's what keeps things exciting for me. And there's so much, none of us are perfect fucking robots. So there's so much minute details that are going to change so that like if you got 12 reps yesterday and you're getting better, does not mean you're going to get 13 reps today.
Right.
you could have gotten 11 and you still could have progressed from that
Agreed.
because
Yeah.
of everything that fucking changed.
Mhm. Yep.
You know, as long as the set was hard and you took it to failure,
Yep.
it's going to be beneficial.
Yep.
And so we overthink this drastically as a population now, you know,
Agreed.
and that is, it's not making us better.
No, I agree with you. I can tell you this. I can specifically remember there was a leg press day where John had me do, it was 3 second negatives with a 1 second pulse in the hole. And he wanted, if my memory's like 12 reps. I had, when I was at the end of that set, I remember my training partner goes, you know, that was 22, right? And I was like, no. I was just counting the negatives in the pulse. Because after that, I had no fucking clue what number rep I was on.
Yeah.
It was like 1, 2, 3, pause, 1, 1, go. No clue. No fucking clue.
Mhm.
Like to me, it's like if I know those people, and maybe it's because I don't wrap my mind around that. Like they want to count the negative, count the pause in the hole, count the positive, count the reps, and then also count the rest periods. It's too much.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sure someone really smart out there will say, Chris, it's not that much. Like it's just how we train. Have you tried it the other way? Which is go so hard that all those numbers are irrelevant.
Hmm.
Well, no.
Well, it makes me laugh too because, like, I can't tell you how many people justify. They're like, "Oh, I'm on my phone during my rest period. It doesn't matter. I have to rest for this time, anyways." And it's like, you've never trained hard, have you? Because I can't tell you. I would love to place a bet of like we could train anything you want during that rest period. If you can send a legible text, you know, I I will pay you $10. If we're actually training hard, during that rest period. That rest period is not just like come back to homeostasis period, you
Right.
know, have a nice little quaint walk in the park,
Right.
you know. Like
Yep.
you should be breathing hard and recovering from that.
Right.
And if you're not, like question what you're actually doing in your lift.
Agreed.
If you can get off of a set of leg press, and when I say a set of leg press, I don't mean like a feeder set, like an actual work set of leg press.
Right.
If you can get up from that and immediately stand up and go to your phone,
Yeah.
rethink what the fuck you just did.
Correct.
Because
Agreed.
I can't tell you how many times I've had to just fucking sit there on the ground,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and or just roll out and just like question my existence,
Right.
because everything from my kneecap to my hip is on fire.
Yeah.
You know, I can't even tell you what I biased because everything from my kneecap to my fucking hips are on fire. Like I can't tell you if this was the inner or outer quad.
Yeah. Yep. What I always laugh at if I was trying to like send a text message after a really hard set of anything, it would be bouncing around in my hand because my nervous system is fucking shaky. I would be
Yeah.
dripping either off of my nose or my chin onto my phone and fucking up the ability to text.
Hmm.
Like, and then to even mentally and cognitively be able to form legible sentences that made sense, it's just not applicable. And yeah, I've yet to have someone field a phone call, have a text, work business while we were training,
Hmm.
outside of the first exercise where we're warming up.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe there's some outliers out there, but I've yet to meet them.
Yeah. You're
So
either doing something and you're giving your attention to it or you're not.
yeah, yeah,
And that is so overlooked nowadays because no one wants to, answer those honest questions of, am I actually giving myself the attention this deserves?
right. Yep,
I always relate this to, like go thread a fucking needle.
right. Yep.
It is challenging, you know. Yes, you can get better at it, but think about what you're not doing when you're threading that needle.
Oh yeah.
Your focus is on a little fucking hole and a little piece of string and putting them together.
Yep, yep,
You know, your focus is not on, wow, this girl's talking, this girl liked my Instagram post. I want to get with her later. You know, you're thinking about putting a fucking, thread in a hole.
right. Yeah. You know, And I know what people say, well, Chris, like you film your exercises while you train. You have a camera guy there at least twice a week. Yeah, you're right. If it wasn't for my work making money off of that and me wanting to teach people, I would film zero
Mhm.
personally. When
Yeah.
Chaz is
And
there,
also, you're not the one filming it.
correct. And that's what most people think don't realize. If you still see some weird shitty camera angle, it's because I prop my phone on my plasma bottle and it's pointing up from the floor because I'm lazy as fuck. I'm like, I really need to get this on camera, and I hit go and then just fucking forget it.
Yeah.
The videos of mine that look good, and most of them are filmed by Chaz, and he stays the fuck out of my way. I realize not everyone has that luxury, um, but it's the truth. It's really hard to mentally think about filming everything just in a training session for me, especially deep in the all season and deep in a prep. In a prep, there's a reason why most of my gym shit is filmed me in the locker room posing because then the work is done. I have no stress.
Hmm.
The vitamin G's in. I've pissed. I'm good. Pose away, homie. Hit play or
Yeah.
record. Whatever. But it's really hard because a lot of times people say, "Well, Chris, you didn't really film that much that prep." And I'm like, "No, I filmed a lot with Chaz, but I just didn't film anything personally." Because when I'm there alone, I have to channel every ounce of energy, effort, and being into making sure that workout is as good as possible.
Hmm.
I'm so concerned about the angle of where I'm setting my phone up, and then if it's going to fall over, and you know, is it even captured in the screen? Like that, if my mind is there, it's not about building back or chest or shoulders or legs. Like,
Hmm.
and maybe that's just me. Maybe other people can do that, but I believe that, like you said, you're leaving stuff on the table if your mind is elsewhere. I just do. Um, so to rein us back in on the question I asked originally with the tempo, man, you definitely feel it going that slow, but you're leaving a lot of weight on the table.
Hmm.
And very few people get huge lifting the 30-pound dumbbells when you could be lifting the 60s. I'm sorry.
Hmm.
I'll leave it at that. It's as simple as that. Do that math. 12 reps with 60s. Do that total load. 12 times 60 versus 12 times 30. That's how I've always looked at it. And to me, I mean, again, I know I made this post a bit ago about, everyone saying, well, look, Nick Walker's a perfect example. Like, yeah, y'all need to go back and watch his old videos of Nick when he was slinging around the heavy weights with Matt Jensen and putting on the majority of the tissue he has today.
Yep.
He
I can't tell you how many times we've talked about this. Maintaining muscle versus building muscle is an entirely different game.
agreed. Yep.
Like, that's why I have this, you have to de-brainwash people. I can't tell you how many bikini girls I've had to work with where it's like, nope, actually you need to be doing a lot of hard shit because
Yep.
the things you're watching your professional bikini girls do, the difference between you and them is they already have the muscle.
Correct. Yes. Yep.
They don't have to build it. They don't want to build any more muscle.
No. No.
And your goal is you want to build muscle and they don't. Why would you train like them?
Right. Yep.
It's that fucking simple.
Yep. Agreed. I've kind of always thought about like refining a muscle is very different than building it. Refining it is also different than maintaining it. And then it's also a different scenario when if you're specifically talking about Nick, it's just his quads that need more tissue. There is no other muscle that needs more muscle. So if you think about that logically, that has to be a very different sensation. I'm going to relate it to a house. If you already have your whole home built and it's perfect except for your kitchen, you're not going to tear down your bedrooms because the kitchen needs to be fixed. Like, take that for what it is. He's
Yep.
just literally focusing on quad sweep. That's it. Quad sweep. Notice I didn't say VMO. Notice I didn't say adductor. Quad sweep. That nine for 99% of the people in the population, that's not you, bro. You're under 230 on bodybuilding stage.
Yep.
Everything needs to grow. Everything. So just some food for thought there. Like when you look up to your idols and where they're currently training, was it what put the most of their muscle on? And I will argue no. But super smart people with really big words and fancy letters behind their name are going to tell you different. And I encourage you to look at their client success stories
Hmm.
and then them personally. I will always say this. If they have all the answers, why didn't it work for them?
Yeah,
I-
that's very true.
I- that's why I love John. John not only had all the answers, but he had the body of work personally and with clients to back up everything he was teaching us.
Hmm.
Here I am competing at 13. Here I am at 20, 30, 40. Huge difference. Major upgrades across the whole physique. Here are the X amount of pros and amateurs that I turned pro that's put on pounds of muscle. Awesome. I get behind you all day long, bro. I believe in it. You have the proof. But yet you have these guys talking on the internet using these monstrous words that they're like, here's my client success story. And it's like no one's over 190. I'm not impressed.
Hmm.
So you've trained no one that's huge, but you tell us how to get huge. Okay, got it. Awesome. Why are you not big again? You tell me you know have the answers for shoulders, but those things are flat as shit. But I'm
Hmm.
wrong. Who has shoulders? And you're wrong because you have shoulders, right? Just drugs, right? Oh, wait, you're on as many drugs as we are, maybe more. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
There is in bodybuilding, I think, just like in sports, there's intangible shit that people can't figure out, and it's here and it's here. You and I are just a little sick enough in the head to test those theories out.
Hmm.
And I'm sure as you, anyone who's ever trained with you for a long period of time can attest to they've probably grown better with you than any other period of their life.
Hmm.
And why do they say that? Because you make them find a new level of pain tolerance and appreciation for hard work. And that is now in today's time often overlooked because this group wants to avoid at all cost the hard work because they want the shortcuts. Or
Hmm.
maybe, you know what, I'm going to choose better words. They want a more efficient route,
Yeah.
effective, or their words optimal, as opposed
Yeah.
to just as you and I took the approach of we're going to brute force our way to this. Okay.
Yep.
Why? Because it worked. And I knew in my heart if I did repeated sets that were miserable, that my body would have to change because it has to adapt. Because it's like, oh man, he's going to give this to us next week and it doesn't need to be this hard. That's how my brain works. That's how your brain works. So it's like, oh, your body adapted to a new stimulus. Well, guess what? That means next week we have to do the same shit, but harder.
Hmm.
Harder, heavier, more reps. So take that for what it's worth. I
Hmm.
mean, and I'm also not saying that maybe if you have having a hard time feeling and connecting to a muscle group, maybe slowing the rep tempo down wouldn't to be smart. That might be the answer initially. And do that with your warm-up sets and your feeder sets and your back off. But your top set, let that bitch rip. That
Hmm.
goes back to our first question. So, you know, scratch both edges. Um, and then maybe, if you want to choose one exercise to really slow the tempo down on, do it. But lift the rest of them at normal, what I would consider like 2-1-2 rep tempo, maybe even 2-1-1, um,
Yeah.
depending upon the exercise. So anything you want to add to that, man, before we wrap it up?
That's really about it.
I agree. I agree. I had a conversation with one of my guys this morning right before we got on, and I was like, less thought, more training your face off.
Hmm.
Because it was like, oh, my gym's really busy. What do I do in this scenario? What do I do in that scenario? I'm like, take a deep breath, problem solve, and just train your face off. None of that matters.
Hmm.
He's like, huh. I'm like, yeah, man, that's the answer. But Chris, the lying leg curl isn't open. Is the seated open? Is the kneeling open? Can you do RDLs and then come back to lying? Not a big deal. The simple, and I think like that's why maybe people don't relate to you and I's thought process a lot. It's because it's like, keep it simple, stupid, man. Like there's a reason the meatheads have all the muscles because they don't worry about all that stupid little minutia shit that the skinny guys do.
Yeah.
Train hard, eat your foods, get your rest. Game over. Repeat. Simple, 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 simple. So until next time, guys, like, share, subscribe. We appreciate you guys watching. Chris, Dave, we are done.